Hey everyone, it's Shelly here at Velomoto, and in this video I am going to show you how I have taken a vintage brass filigree and bent it and wrapped it around a check glass button to create a pendant. I really enjoy using brass filigree in this way, and if this is something you've never worked with before, this will be a great kind of introduction video for you, and will probably get the creative juices flowing for you. Everything that you could be doing with filigree. At least I hope so. Alright, so let's get started. Here we go. Alright, so here we go. What I have picked out to work with is the full poppy Vintaj Filigree. So this is one of the larger ones. The number for it is FL390. And this is a dragonfly check glass button, and this is also one of the larger buttons available, and it is 1 3/16 inches. So I am going to first off nip that metal shank off of the back. Now, warning, these shanks are really thick, tough metal. It's not like just snipping a little bit of a copper wire or something. So please, please protect your eyes. You can kind of cut, you can even snip your hand in there a little bit, but you know, cut that off. You can file that down if you want to. However, I'm going to have the back covered. It is a little bit scratchy, so I don't think that I need to file it down since it's going to be protected in there. So when I'm picking out filigree and things to wrap, there's a few things that I keep in mind. Now, you generally don't, you need your filigree to be bigger than the piece you are wrapping so that it actually grips onto it. However, you don't want it to be so much bigger that it ends up covering, you know, most of your piece while you are wrapping. So this one, as I am kind of lining things up, you can see, okay, there's about that much gap, so I can kind of take this and look and say, oh, well, it's going to cover about that much of the button on either side, and I think that is perfectly acceptable. So I think this one is going to work out pretty good. Now, in working with filigree, it really is just a little bit of practice, but my main rules of thumb when I'm bending filigree are I use my hands as my first tool. Brass is a very soft metal, and if you go too far, you don't, especially with the filigree, it's thin, you don't, if I bend it wrong, I don't get to go back and then come forward again because it will break on me then. So use your hands as your first tool. And make minuscule bends at a time and kind of go back and forth. Just really take your time, be slow and gentle with it. I'm going to make sure I have this centered well, and I'm just going to kind of start bending a little bit on either side just to train the filigree, I guess, where I want it to stay. If I work too much on the sides and don't do the top or bottom, I'm going to end up being out of whack at one point or another. So I just keep kind of working around the circle. Okay, so now I'm to a point where my button is at least, it's kind of centered there. You can see I've just been bending, going around. So now I'm going to get my bend in a little bit closer. Just keep working it a little bit at a time. Okay, so now that I am seeing visually kind of how this is going to fit the button, how this is going to wrap around, now I need to think about how I'm going to make a pendant out of this, meaning I want this to hang from a necklace. So is there going to be, you know, some of these poking up, staying up so that I can attach chain? Perhaps if I had more filigree left up top, I could use a round nose pliers and curl that over to run a string through. It looks to me like my options here, it looks like I'm just going to maybe not bend this top one down all the way like I am the rest of them, and I'll have some little room on the corners here to attach some jump rings. So you just kind of want to be thinking, you know, a little bit ahead in your design and what you're doing so that you don't bend too far when you don't want to. Because as I said, it is filigree, and you don't want to be breaking it off. Okay, so I probably use my hands. I don't know, perhaps more than most. I could almost do all of these pieces with my hands. And sometimes they hurt because of it, so maybe I should use tools more. So if you're not getting as far as I am with your hands, don't despair. I tend to be a little hard on mine. So this top one, I'm just going to go in the middle like that, because I want to leave these two ends poking up a little bit more than I did on the rest, because that's where I'm going to attach my jump rings. So when it's time to come in with a tool and fine tune it, I highly, highly recommend having a nylon draw pliers. These things are great. They really allow you to manipulate without being so harsh on the metal. You will mar and scratch the metal if you are using regular chain nose pliers almost every time. I mean, you can do it. You can be very gentle. Sometimes I'll do some little fine tuning with these very gently. But really, these are the way to go with most everything. So, and with these, you can really come in at some angles, and you really get to just pinch down kind of as hard as you want without really damaging the metal at all. And I like how I'm able to kind of come in and almost, if you can see, I'm kind of coming in at an angle and just curling those edges in a little bit more on these. Really allows you to manipulate the brass nicely. So there we go. I think that looks pretty good. I usually kind of go around the piece, you know, like this corner seems to be sticking out a little bit. I don't want it to be uncomfortable to wear in any way. So I'll bend that down, just kind of do any fine tuning. I think that looks pretty good, and the button is in there solid. It's not going anywhere. It's not, you know, maybe it's spinning a little bit. Going to pinch this right in the middle. I tend to go over things maybe more than I need to. So there we go. And you can, of course, if you want to use dabs of adhesive, some people would use a dab of adhesive here or there before you continue doing the rest of your wrapping. I don't really see it as necessary at all. This is going to hold this really nicely. So all I'm going to do from here is I left these two corners popping out a little bit more intentionally. I'm going to take some jump rings through those holes in the filigree to attach some chain, and I have a lovely necklace. So there you go. Happy creating!